Shalom, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Parasha Talk. I'm Rabbi Elliot Malamet in Highland Park, New Jersey, at the Highland Park Conservative Temple Congregation on Shemen. And joining me, my good friends, Rabbi Barry J. Chesler, Solomon Shaker Day School, Long Island, Rabbi Jeremy Kalmanowski, Anshe Chesed, New York City. We're recording this on the Sunday before Thanksgiving, so we want to say first Shavua Tov. We want to say also Happy Thanksgiving to our American viewers and listeners who are celebrating Thanksgiving this week. Great holiday, wonderful holiday, and hope everyone is going to enjoy their Thanksgiving dinner with an edition of Parasha Talk, because what could be better at your Thanksgiving feast than listening to our discussion of this Parsha?
Okay, the way you want to say this, Elliot, is that you want to talk Torah as you talk turkey.
Oh, nicely done.
I was going to be more oblique and say, because food is important in this parsha,
Yes,
in
it
two
is.
instances, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. The parsha really opens with a cue. It signals that we've moved into another phase. Of course, if that wasn't clear to you after, Chayei Sarah and the death of Abraham, it's clear to you now. Ve'ela Toldot Yitzchak ben Avraham, Avraham olided Yitzchak. Such a great pasuk in the sense that it tells you in the pasuk that Isaac's identity is totally wrapped up in his father. And when we begin to talk about the stories of Isaac, we come up, I think, missing things. Isaac, of the three patriarchs, is the least drawn of the characters. Abraham, of course, is this formidable figure. Jacob goes on to really found the nation and through all of his difficulties, but Isaac, he's a passive figure, and so I want to, present here the characters and say, Isaac is different, obviously, from Abraham, and really the more interesting character here is Rebekah. But I just want you to kind of, let's start out with that. We encountered Rebekah last week. When she was brought to Isaac. We don't know a lot about her, but we do know enough about her to know that she is interesting. There's something really very forthright about her. And let's pick it up. Let's pick up the story here. So they're married. He is 40 years old, by Yitzchak ben 40 shana. And they are not able to have children. Again, the same idea, the same theme, the childless couple. And you see the pain here. Vayetar Yitzchak ladonai lenochach ishto. He prays, he beseeches, he is really quite, torn because of his wife. Vayeter lo Adonai v'atar Rivka ishto, and God answers them. Okay? And then it gets really interesting. She has a very difficult pregnancy. The lovely onomatopoeia, the children, the two infants inside the feti are rubbing up against each other. They're colliding inside. And then she says, Imken lama ze anochi. What am I doing? Lidrosh et Adonai. She goes to seek God. Rabbi Jeremy Kalmanowski, can you expound on those four words, Vatelech lidrosh et Adonai, in terms of Rebekah, the character, and maybe what the Torah is trying to hint to us in terms of this this moment in her life?
Well, I do think, as you said a minute ago, that the Rebekah is the most interesting character. I think that Isaac, we see him. It's not that he does nothing, and there are some significant interactions that he has and stories that he's a part of, but she is a uniquely she is a figure of the two of them more uniquely oriented towards the divine destiny. So she's barren like all the biblical women, and Isaac prays for her, and it works, but when she is then, trapped with twins and it's very difficult pregnancy, then Vatelech lidrosh et Adonai, she goes to seek her own oracle. Why is it that she couldn't have prayed before? evidently that access to God is seen to have come through her husband. It's unsurprising for a kind of a male-centric culture, but she is now able to go to God and get an actual oracle, an ambiguous oracle, not 100% clear,
Okay.
but she has her own independent experience of Hashem, which I think is a marker for the whole sweep of the story, that when Isaac, who by dint we will later hear that he's blind because of old age, although also he is blind, midrashically speaking, Rashi quotes this, he's blind because when bound upon the altar, the angels were weeping fiery tears, and it scalded his own eyes, scorched his own eyes, and he becomes blind then. Or on a poetic level, Isaac is kind of blind. He doesn't get the destiny plan. He likes Esav. Esav perhaps does something from the Jacob can't do. We could talk more about that. But Rebekah, she is really sharp. She does have her own independent relationship with God, and left to his own devices, I think Isaac would have chosen the wrong successor. But Rebekah is the one oriented towards the overall plan, who points us towards the right successor.
So I want to, I'm just noticing this now, in when speaking about Abraham and when speaking about Isaac later in the Parsha, it says, Vayikra b'shem Adonai. Abraham goes, God speaks to him, and it says, he builds an altar, Vayikra b'shem Adonai. And it does this a couple of times. And then later on in this Parsha, God will speak to Isaac, and then he builds an altar, Vayikra b'shem Adonai. This case, it says, Vayidrosh, right? Vatelech
lidrosh.
Vatelech lidrosh et Adonai, and then God immediately answers her. In the cases of Abraham and Isaac, when they go and call to God, there's no answer. God doesn't answer them.
Well, Isaac actually does get an immediate answer. It makes one sort of wonder. So she's barren. It's a source of anguish for her. He makes an appeal to God on behalf of his wife, who was standing right there. And God responds. Now, there's a bit of a wordplay here, that the word for this word of prayer, an atira, is also the word for pitchfork, and the rabbis say that's how, like, the totally awesome prayer of a tzaddik goes. It's like just turning over the haystack, and God is immediately responsive. But what I just want to say about the Isaac thing, apart from the pitchfork thing, Isaac has a very effective prayer. She can't get pregnant, now she is pregnant. It makes you wonder, if all it took was a good prayer, how about Abraham and all those years of infertility?
Well, there you go. And so I think Abraham was more concerned about God talking to him than he was about praying to God and getting answers. At least the text doesn't tell us that Abraham goes and prays to God a lot. It just says Vayikra b'shem Adonai. Well, maybe that is prayer, but it doesn't tell us that God speaks to him after he calls him. But here, interestingly enough, God doesn't speak to Isaac after he prays to God. God basically, causes things to happen so that she becomes pregnant. With regard to God's response to, God seems to have no problem responding to Rebekah, but has problems responding to Abraham and Isaac, is what I'm saying. God,
I think maybe we don't pay enough attention to the word lidrosh.
Okay,
she goes to ask, and that's why she gets an answer. I get the idea with Isaac and Abraham when they vayikra, when they call to God, they're not expecting necessarily an answer, but rather a location for an address, which they get just by speaking. But Rebekah does need an answer.
Drisha suggests urgency, and she's in an urgent state. She thinks that she's going to die. I mean, she says, "Lama ze anochi." Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, this is the first set of twins that are recognized as twins, the Ferush.
Yes. Okay.
So this is a unique experience, one that she's not familiar with. In a sense, it foreshadows the double blessing of the firstborn. It secures Isaac's position as the firstborn because he gets the double inheritance, 2 children at once.
Okay.
And that, as the Torah makes clear, is a mixed blessing.
I think Lidrosh has I'm not denying the urgency thing, but I also think it has a more poetic, kind of broader sensibility. She's got to go seek something. Maybe if I was going to pick up what you said about the difference in Vayikra b'Shem Adonai, they call on God's name or they seek God, that perhaps the calling on God's name is more like, I have something to say, I'm going to say it, I'm going to cast my words towards heaven. She wants an interaction. She's got to go seeking, and she gets an oracle. God says to her something, and says to her something enigmatic. That makes her something perhaps like a little more prophetic than.
So where does, I mean, the text doesn't tell us where she goes, but where do you think she goes? If you had to kind of imagine this, I mean, sometimes when I think about teaching these stories, I want to put myself in the stage director's chair, right, and say, okay, I have a play going on here, and how would you block out the scene where Vatelech lidrosh et Adonai, she goes? Does she leave Isaac? Does she, Vatelech is a loaded word, because when they say to her, are you going to go with this guy? And back last week, and she says, Elech, I'm going to go. Yeah. And Lech Lecha is very loaded. So when it says,
it's loaded because it's unidirectional.
Okay, so is she going to a shrine? Is she going to an altar? Is she going to her own place? Is she going into her room? Is she? I mean, like, where would you have her go?
I would have her go to Melchizedek.
Really?
That way we keep it in the Bible. And she wants a sense of justice or righteousness. She wants to know that everything is going to be okay. So you go to the King of Righteousness.
Wait a second. Okay.
This is what the Rashi gives us the from Bereshit Rabbah, that she goes. Of course, where else would she possibly go? The yeshiva of Shemin Ever.
Okay, fine. So don't forget, this is a woman who has left her ancestral home, and her mother-in-law has died. She has no mother. All she has, who are the women in her life? She only has a character that we learn of later, her quote unquote nurse, right? If you follow the midrash that she was, I don't know, 3 years old. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous, but she comes to Canaan accompanied by another female presence, but she has no one. So considering the fact that here she's in a difficult pregnancy, and she's got no one to turn to. There's no other female presence here for her. I guess, I don't know, maybe.
And when you have no one to turn to, you turn to God or God's representative.
Okay.
So God's representative. I mean, I think that I was just scanning some of the commentaries here. Thanks to the fact that we're having this conversation on a computer, I can scan something while we're talking. And most of them are quite conventional. She goes to a prophet, or she goes to pray. Prayer is clear. Prayer is clearly an element in here. But goes to Shemin Ever. I find that just slightly not implausible, but slightly unsatisfying, in the sense that we don't hear, like when Saul needs to find the donkeys, he's got to find a prophet to ask about the donkeys. She's got something like inner, something interior, something spiritual, and she gets something spiritual back. So I'm more inclined to think that this is like, a meditative, prayerful, interior experience.
Okay, so I'm going to go out on a way out and say, she's going to go to Moriah.
She's going to go to Moriah?
She's going to go to Moriah. She wants to see the room where it happened. I mean, look, if we want to be as outlandish as possible, you're going to go to a holy place. You're going to go to a place where there's an altar. You're going to go to a place where there was, somewhere where the contact was made. And she's got this tremendous spiritual anguish here.
Well, it's interesting, though, because we associate Moriah with seeing, not with hearing.
Okay. So why would she not go there? And or maybe would she invent her own kind of
Well,
place?
so let's just play this out. Why would she go there? Is that the place where Isaac was redeemed in her mind? Right? I mean, we have to imagine. So she comes into Isaac's life after the Akedah,
Yeah.
after Sarah is dead. So how do we imagine her finding out about the Akedah? What is her story of the Akedah?
Okay, so this is our little, we need a schnapps here. We need to close our eyes. We need to meditate here. And if we were going to spin a yarn here and invent our own midrash, I would say the following. Okay, and I love to tell stories. So here's a story. It's a love story. The love story is between Rebekah and Isaac. Okay, and it truly is a love story. It's a great romantic story. In some ways, full of naivete. She doesn't know anything about him, okay? And maybe she learns at one point that, this terrible trauma took place. And because she doesn't know anything about him, she wants to find out more. And because she's really an interesting, I think, also very smart, very conniving, very, developed character, she's going to find out things about him through the geography, I think. And that if I were to nominate a place where she goes, I would nominate Moray, notwithstanding the fact that it's probably a couple of days' journey. And so the scene that I would play out is Isaac, yes, I'm packing my bag. I'm going on a journey. I'm going to retrace your steps because you're old already, or he kind of comes off as an old man already. And she has to depart, and we don't know the time lapse between her decision to go and seek God and they're coming back. But let's give it a day or two. Plausible, maybe. Where are they coming? She's coming from. They're living in the Negev at this point. Where are they living? They're living near Beersheba. They're living Berelach Roi, somewhere in the south. So to go to Morah, it's a bit of a schlep.
Well, no, but it's the same schlep that Abraham took back.
Exactly.
Right. But
by the way, who's still alive? We were looking.
Oh, right.
It's not that difficult to, if you just count up the years and what the ages of people are when they died. We were looking before we started recording. We talked about it in the past that there's all kinds of strange things that show up. Abraham is, by any reckoning, I mean, he's 99 when Isaac is born. He's 175 when Isaac dies. Isaac is is 175 when he dies. Isaac is 40 when he gets married. Abraham and he's 60 when the children are born. So by any calculation of putting all these dates together, Abraham is still alive at the marriage and through 20 years of infertility.
Okay, so Abraham has no relationship with Isaac, but we let's amend what I said before. There's no female presence in Rebekah's life. Not true. Abraham marries Keturah. Perhaps you could say that's a surrogate mother-in-law. She could go, and Keturah is giving birth to lots and lots of children here. Keturah is the only other woman that we know of in the sphere of these stories that has any experience with childbirth.
There probably were some others, though.
Okay, so
the yarn what I would add to what you said, Elliot, is
she's going to go ahead.
I would suggest that her version of the Akedah is that the salvation of Isaac was a response to Isaac's prayer. And that's why she would go to Moriah, because she needs God to hear her prayer.
Interesting.
I'm just going to go with one other counter reading, though, which is not, I mean, we're making up, we're riffing and making up our own midrashim, and the Akedah is super important, obviously, in Isaac's life. Although it is notable that unlike, remember you were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, or, there's some motifs of river, of sea crossings. The Akedah isn't mentioned again in the Tanakh. And I want to focus at least slightly on the, to me, if you'll forgive me, the very pregnant question, Imkein lama ze anochi.
Yeah.
If this is what it's like, why do I exist? Or if this pain is so bad, do I really want to keep existing? Or, with a little bit of a modern ear, you want to ask, is modern feminist ear to Rebekah's claim, is this what my life is about? Is my life just simply about having children? As I've said in the past, we've talked about it among ourselves. We talked about it in previous Parasha talks on this Parsha, Rebekah is a hugely important character. She is the key covenantal link. Am I supposed to have these kids? Do I have something else to contribute? And so she seeks a divine guidance, and God tells her the meaning of this difficult pregnancy.
Yes, interesting. Okay. So obviously everything and our conversation is hinging on her. And she really becomes the character that moves the story along. That's clear. All right, so maybe we'll try to. We have the story. The boys are born. Jacob tricks Esav out of the birthright, the Bechorah.
It's not a trick. He makes a business deal.
He manipulates. He doesn't trick him.
Solely to his advantage.
Okay.
Well, the key thing about that scene. So the first scene after they're born, Esav comes in from the field. He's famished by Midrashic association. This is on the day of Abraham's death. Jacob is cooking a lentil stew because lentils are the traditional morning meal, not morning meal, the MOURN, the morning meal. Why is he cooking lentils? Well, somebody must have just died. Who died? Abraham. And if you count the years, you'll find that Yaakov and Esav are 15 when this happens. But Esav comes in and he's been working, he's out in the field, he's quote unquote dying I'm dying here, I'm dying of hunger. And Jacob, he doesn't steal, but he does manipulate and says, well, sell me the Bechorah. We have in our parsha the Bechorah, the firstborn inheritance right, and the Bracha, which seems to be like the designation of leadership. And Jacob says, sell me the firstborn. Esav says, I'm going to die right now if I don't get lunch. If I don't get lunch right now, I'm going to die. So what do I care about the inheritance right? And this is a kind of a slapstick comic scene. Big dumb Esav, he has zero capacity for delayed gratification. He has zero capacity for thinking about his actions. He just needs lunch now. And so it's comic.
But also tragic.
Until you get the results.
Yes, because Vayochal, Vayesh, Vayakom, Vayelech, Vayives, Esav et HaBechorah. He eats, he drinks, he gets up, he goes, he despises the birthright. Okay.
Right. So I have to add here, there's a old line in literature that you show, not tell.
Yeah.
And the Vayives is telling, it's not showing. Because the other four verbs, you can see them. You can see Esau eat, you can see him drink, you can see him get up, you can see him go. But what did he do that shows that he had contempt for the birthright? Well, that's only in the narrator's mind.
So I'm looking now at the JPS 1985 translation, which I think is very well done, because as you just were reading it, you pointed out that there's 5 verbs in the consecutive structure. Vayochal, vayesh, vayakom, vayelech. He ate, he drank, he got up, and he left. Vayivez Esav et HaBechorah. And as you pointed out correctly, that means Esav and he spurned the birthright, or he despised the birthright. The JPS gives us very nicely. Jacob then gave Esav bread and lentil stew, semicolon. He ate and drank, and he rose and went away, period. Thus did Esav spurn the birthright. Now, it works and doesn't work. The way it works is that it captures exactly what you said. The first 4 describe his actions, and the 5th one is a parenthetical or authorial comment on it. The way it doesn't work is that the poetry of the sentence structure is, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And the 5th one should be an item in the series, not a comment on the series. But I think I like the way they did it.
You know what? They're being influenced by the trope, which is a Vayocha Vayesh, it's a Zakef Katon, Vayakom, Vayelach, which is an Etnachta. So we have 2 word pairs, eating, drinking, getting up and going. And then because they're 2 word pairs, right, Vayivez Esav et HaBechorah. So Vayivez is conjuncted to the next phrase. Okay. I like the series of 5 verbs better, but that who cares? So,
yeah, but no, I think it's important because we're left with this idea that I think Esau gets kind of a bad rap.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why he gets a bad rap is because other people interpret his actions for him and he doesn't get to speak.
Okay.
But
Can we
he
dip it?
does in fact. I mean, you are clearly right that it is an authorial comment, not a description of his action, which just describes what he did. But this imputes the meaning of it. But I mean, I would stress, for the reason that I said before, the whole, I'm going to die if I don't get lunch, and because the words that he says in that story are so comic. Haliteni na min ha'adom hazeh, which, if we're going to be really literal, when he's asking Jacob for lunch, he says, "Stuff the red stuff down my
Down my
throat."
throat. Yeah.
Yeah. So Esav is like he is portraying. I mean, he's not portraying himself. The Torah is portraying him, but the way it's portraying him is as a brute, and a brute cannot be Abraham's inheritor.
Notwithstanding the fact that he is hairy, he is manly, he is strong. Maybe he's the perfect kind of person. I think we have a lot of sympathy for him. We end up having a lot of sympathy for him in light of what happens later on in the parsha, where he's totally cheated out of.
Well, okay, if you're going to go in that direction, then what would really disqualify Esau from the covenantal blessing is that his father loves him. And the true recipient of the covenantal blessing is the one whose father does not love him. Right? Abraham wants to kill Isaac and is glad to do it until he stopped. And Isaac doesn't love Jacob, and that's what makes him the worthy heir.
Sorry.
No. That's not quite right.
Asherah Hafta,
Isaac. Asherah Hafta Yitzhak. If Abraham didn't love,
that's up until then.
If Abraham doesn't love Isaac, then the story makes no sense. But I would say it like this: what really disqualifies him is he is the firstborn.
The firstborn.
Yeah, really, for all of the primogeniture laws and the preferential treatment in inheritance that a firstborn gets, our listeners may know this, that it's not primogeniture like you think of in Europe. It's that whatever number of, in the Torah's inheritance laws, whatever number of sons you have, let's say, with the daughters it gets more complicated with Benot Tzlov at the end of Numbers, but we'll leave it alone for the moment. Let's just say a patriarch has 4 sons. He divides his inheritance into 5 portions. Each one gets 1, and the firstborn gets 2. It's not the firstborn gets everything. It's the firstborn gets 1 additional share. So the Bible's favorite story over and over and over again is that the physical firstborn doesn't really deserve it. There is a more deserving secondborn. And so it's amazing that a book which is so normative, which is so all about the rules of proper behavior, one of its best stories is that destiny happens in a violation of the normal rules.
So I'm going to say the Bible's second favorite story has to do with, and here for young listeners, you need to, parents.
Is this R-rated?
This is the sex part of the story. Okay, there's some going on in the story, and so they go. There's this moment where the stories imitate the previous story of Abraham and Sarah, where Abraham tries to introduce Sarah as his sister. Same is happening here with Isaac and Rebekah when they go to Gerar, to the place of the Plishtim. There's a famine in the land, Vayira'av ba'aretz, and they have to migrate to a place where there's more food. And so they're going to this place, and Isaac says, "This is my sister," and sure enough, Avimelech, it's a long time. They've been staying there for a long time. Vayashkef Avimelech melech Plishtim. The king Avimelech, the king of the Philistines, he looks, and Vayashkef, we've identified that word as he looks down. He's probably perched higher up, and he's looking down, probably from his second floor suite to maybe a first floor apartment. Ba'ad hachalon, he's at, I guess, his window, Vayar, and he sees, V'hinei, and behold, Yitzchak mitzachek et Rivka ishto. Isaac is, quote, playing with his wife Rebekah. Nice play on words there, Yitzchak mitzachek, but so we understand this to be as involved. They're intimately involved, okay? And Avimelech sees this. And my question is, there's so much. This is a second favorite story of the Tanakh, right? There's the curiosity, the tension, why is Avimelech, at his window? Why is he looking down? Is he, again, if you were directing the story and putting on a stage or putting on a screen, what would you pull out of the story? What would you?
Well, you told us before you thought that maybe I forgot if this was before we started recording or once recording, that Isaac and Rebekah are portrayed as having love story, and so could we say something as speculative but also fun as they couldn't keep their hands off each other?
I think so. No,
they're trying to do this ruse they're doing this brother-sister ruse, but they can't pull it off.
Exactly. He's, from the moment that he tells her, Yitzchak tells Avimelech that she's my sister, he's going like, yeah, come on. And don't forget that Rebekah is unusually beautiful. She's so beautiful that this is what attracted the servant to her in the first place. He was stunned by her beauty. That is the most defining quality of her character, is that she is physically beauty. I mean, we didn't mention this last week, but she comes out with the pitcher on her shoulder, okay? And so since we're in the X-rated part of this Parasha Talk, the narrator is just is having fun with this, because the pitcher is shapely, and evidently, she is probably very shapely as well, in the most attractive way possible. And Avimelech sees this and is attracted to her, and thinks, well, she's his sister. Yeah, right. And he is waiting. He is waiting for the moment to catch them. Barachalon. I mean, we all have curiosity over our neighbors, okay? Except, he had super curiosity over his neighbors. And why were they placed in the next shack next to him, or the next hut, or he gave them a prime location for lodging so that he could spy on them, right?
You're suggesting, Elliot, if I understand you correctly, you're interpreting the Bible as saying, okay, before there was the internet.
Yes, before we don't know a lot about Avimelech, okay, but he's a king. There's the power, there's masculinity there, there's sexuality there, there's a woman, there's a beautiful woman, and I think he wants her. And so we have a suggestion here that there are, as always in the Bible, there are echoes of these stories in later biblical stories. Take David and Bathsheba, for example, where Bathsheba is naked on the roof, and the reader asks, is she up there because she is trying to seduce David, or is it an accident? And what is he doing there looking at the roof? And of course, if you're Leonard Cohen, you know what he's doing there. But she's bathing on the roof, but the story is built on the tension between whether or not she's trying to seduce him, or whether or not he is simply a bored king and doesn't know what to do with himself. And we have that echo going on here. I don't know if you have a reaction.
Just the only thing I would say about that is, not in the Abraham and Sarah in Egypt, but both in the Abraham and Sarah in the Philistines with Avimelech. It's not as a person's name, it seems to be the name of the Philistine king, or Isaac and Rebekah and Avimelech, even if it's not the same Avimelech. The Philistines come off pretty good, because the Philistines, in neither case, actually lay a hand on the supposed unmarried sister. In fact, each case to Abraham, and now this case in this parsha to Isaac, they say, "What the hell are you doing to us? Why did you risk a terrible outcome?" And in both cases, Abraham says, I knew this was not a God-fearing place, and Isaac said, well, I thought you'd kill me. But in both cases, the Philistine king Abimelech says, listen, you needlessly exposed all of us to mortal sin. Why'd you do that? Don't do that. That's not nice.
I love what he says here. He says, Kimat shachav achad ha'am et ishtecha. Somebody from the people, achad ha'am, right?
Any of these
your
yokels,
wife.
any of these yokels could have slept with your wife.
Right, but he means himself.
He says, okay, that's maybe true. I mean, I was thinking that it's like, we're Philistines. We're a bunch of Philistines around here. We do all kinds of stupid stuff.
Oh my goodness. Well, it skirts into there. So okay, so that happens. From that, he is very blessed. We're out of time, but we know what happens in the next story. The next story is such a powerful, tragic story, but it's the story that sets the direction for the rest of the stories of Jacob. Jacob will purloin the blessing from his father at the expense of his brother. And we've talked about, the most tragic lines of the Bible, right? Do you only have one blessing? Oh my God, your heart breaks when Asaph says that to his father. Do you only have one blessing? And then, of course, at the end of the Parsha, Rebekah, who takes pilots the family at this point, is saying to Jacob, you got to go, brach lecha, you got to leave, because he's going to kill you. And she becomes the one that loses a child, loses both children, right? In a sense, there's never any reacquaintance or re-encounter between Jacob and Rebekah after the story. So in a sense, she as formidable as she is, she's also the most tragic figure.
It never accounts her death, right?
Never accounts. No, don't think so. But we don't want to end on that. We want to end on something good. So we'll say, first of all, how grateful we are for if we're seeing things about the things around the Thanksgiving table, the things for which we give thanks. We had Yaakov Epstein wrote, I'm going to make a shout out to him because he's such a loyal fan and said a nice comment. He's thankful for our Parsha Talk.
We're thankful for Yaakov.
We're thankful for you, and we're thankful for everyone who watches and listens and writes in. We enjoy it. We have so much fun doing this. I want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving and a good Shabbos coming up. Good week. And we'll see you next week on the next edition of Parsha Talk.
Happy Thanksgiving. Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.